Hey, and after a crazy trip back from Dubai to Hong Kong, it's now time for another episode of the Self-Made Podcast. This one is quite an exciting one when I sit down with Adam Hayley. Many of you might know Adam from his thriving business, the Online Trainer Education, otherwise known as the OTE, where he helps trainers take their work on the gym floor and transition that into an online format, giving them financial and location freedom with their business. Many of you might not know the story of how Adam came into this and what his journey was from gym floor PT in London through to his running his own online business himself, getting great results with his clients, and then transitioning into the business market. Few might not know the story of Adam's upbringing through issues with his family, issues with injuries, and how he overcame all these difficulties and how that turned him into the person that he is today. I have known Adam for a very, very, very long time. He was actually the first person who coached me to a photo shoot back when I was working in the dungeon in London, and now he is my first business coach. Now he's living in Dubai, hence the name of the episode, From the Dungeon to Dubai. And we speak about that transition, how he moved out to Dubai and how that affected his business. A really great episode for anybody that wants to learn a little bit about how to succeed in their business, how to take their results online and get a really, really profitable and enjoyable business through this. As always, if you enjoy the episode, please share on social media, tagging me at Kingsley Dustin and Adam Hayley 1, and I will leave you with myself and Adam Hayley.
So for anyone who doesn't know you, Adam, although probably about 40% of the people that are listening to this are probably on your course, tell us a little about who Adam is and what makes him successful.
Yeah, so I got into the industry 16. I got qualified, so was real sporty back at school. Had both legs broken. Was in a wheelchair for 8 weeks, non-weight bearing. That's what led me into training because I could no longer do football, rugby, and my legs were tiny. So I had to kind of rehab myself and get some size back on them. So went down that route, loved it. Decided I wanted to do that for a job. Got my level 2 at 16 and then did 11 years, obviously on the gym floor, the last 5 of which were alongside yourself in London. I'm a massive introvert and, don't like small talk, if I'm honest. So was already doing online coaching. And I remember saying to one of our ex-colleagues, actually, I remember talking to him once and saying, I'd love it if like one day I could just sit from an office at home and just get all my clients' results, but like from a laptop without having to see them. I remember him laughing and being like, oh yeah, that'd suit you down to the ground. And then basically, I took the plunge a couple of years later and that's what I did full time. Built a pretty successful online coaching business. Then I left that and went into the online coaching business with an ex-colleague. We built that in our first year to do about $250,000. Second year, we're on track to do about 400,000. And then we decided to part ways. And I got thinking, right, what's next? And I'd just been bitten by the business bug. Really enjoyed the psychology of it. And so ironic because it had always been a weakness of mine. Like I'd hated the idea of selling, of taking money, of marketing. I just wanted to get people results. Like that's all I wanted to do. But then suddenly I just found it really interesting and it was like the next step for me. And then I had a few PTs who had watched my journey going from on the gym floor to then online and being able to travel and earning a little bit more money. They'd asked me, if I could help them do it. So I consulted with them privately. Loved that new dynamic where I just love educating. I just love teaching things. So I guess when I was a PT and an online coach, I was teaching clients, I was educating clients to get better results and passing on my knowledge and experience. So this was just a different dynamic for me where it was now just still teaching, but now teaching the trainers. Massively fulfilling. So launched the OTE, which is a mentorship about 3.5 years ago. It started off just as these little 10-week intakes, about 35 people per intake. And now it's turned into this mammoth that's, 450 odd active students. I think there's a team of about 10 of us now. Just loving it, just giving personal trainers more freedom, and whether that's financial freedom, whether it's, just more time, whether it's being able to travel, unfortunately COVID's kind of thrown us a curveball with that one. yeah, that's it in a nutshell. So now I'm a full-time sort of business mentor.
So like, obviously, like a lot of people have known the growth of the OTE, and obviously we'll come back and cover that. But looking at it from like, people might not know the backstory of you on the gym floor, you as a coach, and you sort of glossed over this really, really massive life-defining moment at the start of this of both legs being broken. So like were you sporty prior to that? And what actually happened with that ended up shifting you into the bodybuilding ring?
Yeah. So, I was really sporty when I was younger. I did boxing, I did rugby, I did football, I did whatever sports I could. Believe it or not, I was relatively good at football, actually. And then I had quite a common issue, Osgood-Schlatter's disease, which some people have possibly had that are listening to this, which is just overuse of the quadriceps when you're young. And, whenever you're doing running or impact-based things, it's like a pain below the kneecap. So I was going through that. Went and saw GPs. They passed me on to specialists, and then through looking at my x-rays, one of the specialists said, actually the Osgood-Schlatter's disease, I'm not fussed about that. He goes, because that's something you'll grow out of eventually. Like, it's very common in athletes in their mid-teens, late teens. What I'm worried about is the fact that you've actually got bowed legs and you're going to go over on your ankles, and potentially like you might not be able to walk when you're older. So we need to raise that. So it ended up getting escalated, and it resulted in a meeting of like 23 of the top orthopedic surgeons across the UK, all coming to the town that I lived at to examine me. I was like 14 at the time. And eventually Oxford took me on and realized I had something called Blount's disease, which is basically where the bone on the outside of the shin grows faster than the one on the inside. So, my ankles were inverted and whatnot, but I'd never really noticed, because I was born with it and it visually wasn't a huge thing. Just never thought of it. So yeah, they basically gave me two options. I could either go Forrest Gump style, big cages on both legs, manually have to like twist them and so on. I'd still be able to move around, but of course on crutches and have these big cages, which when you're 14 or 15, that's not really appealing. Or I could do the shorter, sharper approach, which would be break my leg surgically. They basically took a wedge of bone out, put a bigger wedge of fake bone in to like open the angle. And then, pinned and plated it up. They advised that I do one at a time, do, one then the other. And I was like, nope, rather just go all in, just break both of them. I'll do it over the 6 weeks holidays. So we end up having a bed, like a hospital bed, delivered to my dad's place, put in the dining room. And I lived there and had to pee in a bottle for 6 weeks. And anytime I needed to take a shit, my dad would have to, will me into it was not great. So that was that. Then the physio had given me exercises to do each week. It was like a 6 weeks, or I guess you could say periodization. And about 2 weeks in, 2.5 weeks in, I messaged her saying, hey, I'm already doing the exercises at week 8. Can you give me anything else? And she says, I can't really think of anything. So the plan was, I was meant to do, it was either 6 or 8 weeks. I think it was 8 weeks, non-weight bearing, then go back, get it x-rayed, and then they would put me through physio and teach me to walk. Because I was so restless and just bored at home, about week 4, I basically taught myself to start walking, collapsed a few times by myself at home. I just sort of grip onto things and sort of waddle about the place like a penguin. And then I called her and said to her, her name was Helen. I was like, hey, Helen, just a quick one. I've just started to try and teach myself to walk. Are there any other exercises you can give me at this point? She sort of glossed over it and was like, no, just, don't hurt yourself. You shouldn't really be doing that. And it's not until I went and saw my surgeon that I wheeled into the room, and he just pulled this funny face and he went, well, go on then. And I'm like, what? And he goes, Helen's already told me, you started teaching yourself to walk. Do you know how irresponsible this has been? Blah, 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 blah. Get up and walk. And I sort of awkwardly, shuffled across the room. He basically refused to give me physio. He was like, all right, you've done it. So I never had physiotherapy after it. And then my legs were just tiny because, 8 weeks of laying in a wheelchair, they had atrophied massively. So, I just decided to join my local gym, like a Virgin Active or something like that. Just started doing some exercise that I saw the bodybuilders do, my logic was just like, oh, maybe I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. It's a bit too much. But if anybody knows how to put on muscle, it's got to be them. So it's going to be the fastest way for me to be able to just get my legs back to what they were. Then I started training, and then I had a bodybuilder come over to me after about 6 months of training. I would have been like maybe 16 at this time. He just said, how long have you been training? I said, about 3 months. I've never trained with free weights yet because I was just doing machines. He said, you've got really good genetics. You should consider competing in bodybuilding. And then that's what led me into the bodybuilding thing. It's what led me into wanting to coach others. So yeah, started out as a lifeguard, watching the ripples in the water, and eventually negotiated a deal where I could do 20 hours on the gym floor as a fitness instructor, and then 20 hours as a lifeguard, and then eventually 40 hours as a gym instructor, and then PT, and eventually London with you.
So speaking of that story, I never thought it'd be the most Adam Hayley story I've ever heard in my life. The fact that, only you would decide to get them both done at the same time and then teach yourself to walk. I mean, what is it that you feel like? Because I suppose that it's probably this mindset that served you well over the rest of your career. A lot of people would have just gone, that's it. My legs are broken. I can't do much with them. They may have taken the casts. What do you think that's like? Is it just something you've always had, this desire to do more and push further? Or was there a reason why you think you pushed through that and, almost got restless with it?
Yeah. So I never really thought there was anything to it. It was just like, everybody makes choices. Sometimes we make the right, sometimes we make the wrong ones. Now in hindsight, looking back, what I think a lot of it is without getting too deep, my childhood wasn't particularly good, where my dad was physically abusive towards me, towards my mum. They split. My stepdad came in. He was also physically abusive. So I guess there was all of this sort of stuff going on, where eventually I just hit that point where it was like, fuck it, I don't need anybody. I got this. That's, I think, been my entire, it's only now over the past year or two that I've been thinking why am I maybe wired a little bit differently to some? And I think it is that just typically I've always just been, fuck it, I'll just go do it to the best, fuck what anybody thinks. And I don't need to do the long route. Let's just go all in, get it done. I'll do it myself. So I think that's probably all stemming from, not really having a family that at the time I felt I could rely on, which I know is really deep for 5 minutes into a podcast. But I think that's probably what it is that, maybe not the greatest of childhoods, but in terms of everything else that I've done, it's forced me to take risks and stuff like that now led to an okay life, I guess.
I think, that you tend to find these stories with most people that are successful, right? Whether it's something like most comedians get bullied or people go through those hardships do sort of form a character. And I'm going to leapfrog a little bit for the next question because it flows on quite nicely from having that mindset in a way that you've always felt that you needed to do it yourself. That when you set up your first online business, that was alongside a business partner. And now you're saying there were 10 people in the OTE. How was that? How difficult was that to sort of allow yourself to work with others and letting go of sort of that control of things? And how has that transition been?
Yeah, so I think the setting up the first online business and doing it with Akash, my ex-business partner, I think that came about because I used logic for once. And I thought there are things that Akash is good at, i.e. numbers, analytical, blah, 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 blah. There are things that I seem to be better at, which although I hate small talk, it's people skills were probably better than Akash's, arguably. And, just a few things like that. So at the time, it was actually, I could see the logic in that our personalities and strengths and weaknesses complemented each other. So I think it was a case of leveraging him and, he would have leveraged me as well. Now, when I split from Akash, then when I initially started really building the OTE, I then went back to the whole, fuck it, I don't need anybody. I've just had what I would consider to be a best friend of 5 years. We don't speak now. So it's not a great split in business. Walked away from something that I'd built and, come up with a name for the logo, the branding, the systems. So when I started to build the OTE, it was back to don't need anybody. And then I just hit a point where the OT was growing way faster than what I could cope. And I've always been about service and trying to one of the things that Jeff Bezos, goes on about, if you look at his principles, is being customer obsessed. It's like his big thing. And I've always been like that. And I started getting messages from people signing up to the OT and realizing that they had like a 1 week wait to get their call in. And it wasn't so bad. And then it went to like a 1.5 weeks wait, then a 2 week wait. Then somebody messaged me like, hey, Adam, I've just joined, I really want to get going, but my call with you isn't for another 3 weeks. It was those things that were happening, which is where I realized, okay, I've got two options here. I either carry on the Adam Hayley show and realize that for me not to lose my reputation, either the business stays still and I plateau and hold it here, or I can manage at these numbers. But I've always had a progressive mindset. I hate sitting still, hence, the bodybuilding and stuff. I knew that I wanted to build this and impact more people. So that's where it was like, okay, at this stage, I'm going to accept help, but it'll be on my terms this time. Difference with a business partnership is you both earn 50-50. You have to, sometimes one of you will compromise. And whereas now it's in effect, I can call the shots, which means that I'm in control at all times. And if somebody's not a great fit, I filter them out. If they're good, then I can really reward them. So yeah, I think that's why I've been able to do it now. And now that I guess I'm a bit older, the relationship with my parents and everything is really, really good now. So I'm at peace with that. So it's just, I think I've just matured a little bit. Don't have such a chip on my shoulder.
So going back to almost pre the start of the first online business, because you were saying that in that initial sort of write-up, that wouldn't it be good to have something that, you could work from home and do that and get around small talk? I mean, obviously we've both worked in that very empty, daylightless dungeon. Going into the online space, how much did you feel like being in that dungeon, being around those people, working with those people, maybe learning a bit of small talk if you're not a big fan of it, has helped you transition both into RNT and then into the OTA?
If I'm really honest, if we're talking about the place that shall not be named, if we talk about that,
if you want, I don't mind.
Yeah, if we talk about just UP, then from a business side of it, I wouldn't say I learned a lot. I say the big principles I learned was, my opinion, how to try and treat people when they do work with you. I didn't particularly enjoy how I was treated towards the end. I feel like I was quite a key player, getting a lot of results and transformations, helping out the younger trainers and so on. Anybody that's been at this business will know what I'm talking about. So for me, that helped me in that I was like, okay, what did I really enjoy about being there? And then what were the things as a member of staff and a trainer did I not really enjoy? And I just didn't feel that appreciated. So that's really helped me with how I run the OT. So for example, Jan, for example, who's always helped me out with my DMs, I messaged him the other day and I'm like, dude, it's been a year. Please go book a hotel for you and your friends he's based in the Philippines. Go book a hotel for a few nights. It's on me. Thank you for crushing it the last year. Sam, one of my coaches, we're at a year. So again, I messaged him. I'm like, hey, unfortunately, Sandy and I can't celebrate with you, but why don't you and Ellie go book in at a spa hotel? It's on me, food is on me, and so on. These little things like that, I believe I'm relatively good at because I've been on the receiving end of not feeling appreciated. As for the rest of the business, though, I guess subconsciously there would have been bits that I'd learned, not a huge amount. The training side of things, though, it forces you to level up there, right? It made me a better trainer, which is ultimately what helped me build RNT so quickly, because we were able to take clients from scratch and then quickly get them great results, put it over Instagram for social proof. So I'd say it's results and probably how to hopefully keep staff motivated, fired up, make them feel appreciated instead of just a small cog in the machine. And that's ultimately how I ended up feeling there. And I think that's probably the general consensus of most people.
I I think I definitely second that in the space of working there. I remember when I walked in the door, and it's a very, very different dungeon now than when I walked in. But like, you are forced to level up by the standards that you set yourself, and it's almost I don't want to say a blessing and a curse, because like in some ways, like it's allowed me to have the standards similar to yourself when you start R&T, like with number of results, fairly quickly. I hold myself to a higher standard than maybe I did before. But like the flip side of that for me sometimes is not being able to shut off ever, because I've been trained for 7 years to keep those standards. But like, I think, I remember walking into that place being, me and Akash probably being two of the smaller dudes in the gym, where it was like Justin, Nick Daniel 1 week out from you, like if he's in a competition, you squatting something ridiculous in the far corner, and it's picture perfect squat as well. And I'm sitting there lanky, tiny in the corner. I'm like, I've got to level up. And I remember when the stuff I've done now, going into mentoring and working with trainers, and it's a lot of that's down to me going, right, I'm going to study now. So if I can't be the biggest guy in this gym, I'm going to be the smartest dude eventually. And I'm investing in myself in 3-4 years down the line. And I think like I for everything that's, I'm sure we'll go into a little bit, but everything that's happened since and the way I exited that business, that's something that I'll always take into whatever I do, I think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Pros and cons. And like, I think the biggest thing that most people can take if they've done their time at a gym like that is it just forces you to be around better trainers. It forces you to be a better results producing trainer, as you say, to be on it. There is a correlation with trainers that come onto the OT that have previously worked at a gym of that level and having the work ethic to see this business thing through. Some of the trainers that maybe have worked around commercial gyms or, have never really pushed themselves physically to try and get either lean or shredded or, add muscle tissue and so on. They sometimes do lack that mental fortitude to just keep turning up even in business. That's my Amazon parcel, so apologies for that.
No problem. Do you feel like, obviously that's the positive of the people that come in from a gym like that? Do you feel there's any, like, you see that there's downsides of people coming in from that sort of environment where, it's been so focused on the training and not enough on the business? Do you feel that there's other aspects people like that struggle?
No, I mean, I think it just has to serve a purpose at the time, right? So when we were there, did I want to learn anything about business back then? No, I was just so hungry and focused on being the best coach I am. So to me, I just look at that place as it was a great stepping stone to taking me up another level or two as a trainer. That's what I took from it. Then, there's a couple of lessons you will learn, but no, I don't think trainers coming in from like other gyms. I think the big thing is just anybody that was at, a high level gym, high level one-to-one PT facility, use it to just hone your craft, because there are trainers that are new to the industry, wet behind the ears, still don't know really how to get their clients a result, still have never really tested themselves physically. And they're worrying more about, trying to split test a Facebook ad. And it's just like, there's phases of your journey. And I think a big phase of it should be, you just surround yourself with other trainers that force you to level up. You, improve business as much as you can. But I think the primary thing should be, you just get really fucking good at getting your clients results, at understanding customer service and so on. And then the business thing will fall into place.
How did you find like your imposter syndrome? Or did you feel there was a moment when you left, UP going into starting your own business where you almost were a little bit knocked back down to earth just because you entered into this big wide world? Like how did that transition sort of go?
Right. Don't want to sound arrogant here, but I had imposter syndrome at the beginning when I moved directly into business. When I moved from leaving there to going online, I didn't have it because I genuinely deep down knew, with the context is that you want to use it, that I was a fucking good coach. Mm. So even though I was now on Instagram or whatever, and potentially against others, I still don't think many trainers could match the volume. If you look at the ratio of results per clients that I was working with and the depth of them, I don't think many trainers back then on socials were matching that. It's why, Akash and I, when we set up RNT, our predictions, I've still got the emails. Our predictions were in our first year. I've got the email chain where we'd come up with a forecast. Akash had worked on it. And it worked out that we were going to earn about 10 grand a year each, genuinely. And I've got my reply going back to him going something like, fuck me, I'm going to need to go take on a part-time job at M&S, something like that. So my point to this is we didn't have business acumen like when we were starting RNT. We really made it up as we went along. And we'd always worked from gyms. So going into the online thing and advertising over social media was very new to us. The reason that we managed to build so quickly was because of our results. Like we had a really good track record. As soon as we start getting our first few clients through the door, we pushed them really hard. We got quick results, quick wins. We delivered a great customer service, and then referrals spread and so on. So without sounding arrogant, I do think when I went into online coaching, I didn't really have much imposter syndrome. It was just very exciting that I could now be in my element of working from my laptop, doing it in my own time. Where I did face imposter syndrome initially was when I had made the decision, I'm going to put myself out there now as a business coach. Because now I was looking at the likes of the Craig Ballantynes, the Bedros Keuilians, the Vince Del Montes, these sorts of guys that, were doing sort of like 7 figures, 8 figures. And I was thinking, holy shit, I've not done that 7-figure mark yet. So how can I put myself out there? And I guess that is the equivalent of a new online coach coming to the scene and trying to compare themselves to somebody that preps people and gets them on stage. It's the same thing. It's like your target audience is different. So then I read this book called Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. And if somebody is listening to this on the OT, you know the story, so I'm really sorry. But for others of you, it might be useful. And basically, there's this analogy in it saying that you just need to be 2 chapters ahead. And they told the story of the film Catch Me If You Can, where you've got the lead character, Frank, who's a bit of a con artist, scam artist. And I'm going to butcher the topic, but he eventually ends up, as a fraudster, and he goes and teaches, let's call it advanced economics or something like that at university level, teaches it for 2 or 3 semesters, finally gets caught out. And when he gets caught, the authorities say to him, how have you this is a subject you've never studied for. How have you taught it for this long and none of your students have caught onto it? And he goes, it's really simple. He goes, the textbook that students read, I just read the same one. I read it 2 chapters ahead of them and I teach it back. When I got my head around that, it was like, okay, these trainers aren't coming to me to try and land 6 figures and 7 figures overnight. They just want to hit their first 2-3 grand and come off the gym floor. And I can definitely teach them that. So that's how I kind of got over the imposter syndrome with business.
I think that story is one I always often come back to, especially in the first few months of being on the OT and working under, you and your team. And I think for me, I wouldn't really call it imposter syndrome because similar to yourself, being in that environment and getting as far as I did in that environment, I never ever questioned necessarily myself as a coach per se, but it places like that, they have this great way of making you feel important and undervalued at the same time. And I remember coming out of that and then thinking you're bigged up a lot by certain people because you're of a certain level within that business, to come out going, no one knows who the fuck I am. I am back at almost at square one, not because I'm the coach I am, but in terms of who actually knows it out of the people that, let's call a spade, wouldn't be allowed to buy from me anyway.
Yeah.
And that was a very, very challenging thing. I think looking at that and okay, grounding myself, where who's the kind of people that I need to, I'm looking to work with, where do I need to be to help them? And I said this, I put the live in the Facebook group the other day. It was quite humbling coming off a phenomenal, by the way, Recalibrate event. I really, really enjoyed that last night. And going back and looking at what I written down in my Kickstart modules and the 90-day things. And I had a month where I was pushing the podcast more, a lot of my outreach was that. And I was getting quite hard on myself. It's not as much coming in, I'm not doing as well. And I looked back and I went, I have achieved every single thing I set out to in that first 90 days. And then some. And if you, similar to someone getting a shape, any business you'll start to run, it's if I could do that for the next 90 days, and for the next 90 days, I'll be in a much better position than I am now. And I think every time you stay 2 chapters ahead, you're always going to be a further chapter down as the years go by.
Yep, chunk it down into milestones, and then hit the next one, look back, give yourself a pat on the back, recalibrate. It's the whole theme of the event, and then go again.
So, like you mentioned, obviously getting that like email thread from Akash that you were going to make like 10 grand a year. Like, obviously you did incredibly in your first year, and then to the point where you end up getting the business bug. So, like, how was that? Like, how did that feel jumping from security, going from like what was a an all right paycheck to being like, we're going to make 10 grand each? Like, is this just the same mentality as before of just keep going head down, or was there moments where it was like, oh, I'm way over my head here?
No, it was just like, with the PT stuff, I'd started out as a lifeguard, then it was 14 grand a year cleaning treadmills. And I just knew that, every gym that I'd worked at, I'd climbed through the ranks, and every single gym that I'd worked at, I'd always eventually somehow work my way to be, respected and hopefully one of the top guys. So I knew that, I didn't know when, but I knew that it would pay off if I was just my usual stubborn, resilient self. And the driving force for me going online, although now what I do with the OT is, of course, it's very finance focused, and it's like, you can earn this and you can earn this. And that genuinely wasn't the driver for me. So my big goal was, if I had just matched what I'd earn in London, but within 2 or 3 years, I'd have been happy. Like, that was really it. I just wanted to do it because I wanted to travel a bit more, and I wanted to work on my own terms, not have a boss anymore, and just do it from my laptop. That was genuinely it. So the idea of earning 10 grand a year was far from ideal. But I'd saved a bit of cash. We'd saved like 3-4 months worth of wages in case shit hit the fan. So we had I had a cushion. And then, if it had been at 10 grand, I would have had to have found something else to supplement it. Fortunately, I didn't. But I knew that eventually, if I just got my head down, stuck to it, got people results, there's that whole phrase in marketing, do a great job, tell everybody about it. That's all I knew I had to do. Keep doing a good job, keep showing it off. Keep doing a good job, keep showing it off. Eventually, it will pay off. Thankfully, it paid off much quicker than what either of us had anticipated. And then it really opened my eyes to the finance side of things, of like, oh, wow, okay. So you've got somebody that could go and study 7 years in med school, work crazy hours, and maybe touch 100 grand a year. Maybe, if you're a neurosurgeon or something, you'll break it. And I can post a few times on Instagram, tell somebody to eat 10 grams less of fat and earn the same sort of money. Like, light bulb moment. Holy shit, there's some potential here. And then that's really what sped things up for me to want to accelerate and help other people get the financial freedom as well as the locational freedom.
Do you think, and so we'll go into what that transition was in a second, do you think if there wasn't that rift between you and Akash, do you think right now you would have been still coaching clients, being in the R&T, R&T or wherever else? Do you still think you would have been online coach rather than necessarily gone into the business side? Or was that something that was in your mind prior to this all happening?
Yeah, so already before I'd set, in fact, kind of how the OT came about, actually, I hadn't touched on this bit really, was so before Akash and I split, our big problem was trying to hire and scale and get the right trainers on board. It was one of our biggest bottlenecks, was how do we get the right trainers who got the right attitude, but also very good. So something that I'd started to set up at R&T behind the scenes was called the R&T Academy, which was going to be a 10-week mentorship. It was like 500 quid or something like that. And the goal of it was to educate and train trainers, because we had delivered seminars and stuff previously over 10 weeks. So the goal of it wasn't to help him in business. It was just to level up as a coach, so mentoring coaches. And then the goal of it was, at the end, we could then have a pool of people that we could pick as to the best coaches, because they've been through our methodology. So we'd set that up. And then before it actually went live, it was due to go live around September time or whatever. Before it actually went live, that's when we split. And part of my negotiation with Akash was, I want to take the R&T Academy with me. So I will walk away from the business. I'll agree it for this fee, which of course, hindsight was way too less. It was way too little. but it was just, I'll walk, but I want to take the R&T Academy because I really see potential here. And I remember the whole time that I was talking about this R&T Academy, Akash kept going, it's going to be a distraction. I can't see it paying off that well. And I was like, no, like this is the future. Like mentoring trainers is where it's at. There's going to be a lot of money here. And then, my hunch was right. I took it over. The first OT intake wasn't even called the OT. It wasn't called the R&T Academy. It had no name. And it was predominantly focused. It was centered around, it was 10 modules and only 2 of them were business. And it was all about nutrition, training, supplementation, case studies, and so on. 2 business ones. It was just over time that more and more people could tell that I was more passionate about teaching the business stuff at this point. So then it kind of segued now into obviously mostly business. So no, I don't think I would still be training clients. I think my role would have been to scout and take on new coaches as R&T scales, and then to focus on how do we develop the coaches and looking after them and making sure that they're singing from the same hymn sheet, they're getting their clients' results, that sort of thing.
I like, obviously, like a lot of this, the underpinning on this is your transition from being nutrition focused, that was your thing, to being business focused. And like as you said, like I remember back in the days at UP, right? I remember finding this biochemistry book with a Rolex watch on top. And I remember sending the picture of this to you on WhatsApp and go, I'm guessing this is yours that's left this here. Like, you were so into that sort of stuff that, like, as you said, when you left, it was like Akash was the business side of it, so you could be the coach side. How did that switch? Like, where did that moment come where you were like enjoying the business side?
So this is interesting. So the whole time that I was at RNT, the whole time, although I'd enjoyed like the idea of, coaching the trainers and so on, the whole time, the thought process was that I was the trainer and focused on the client delivery, and Akash was the business brains. And I'd accepted that the whole time. Was like, don't like business, bores me, intimidates me. Akash is, he's the business one, and I'm the one that's going to make sure that our clients get great results and yada, yada, yada. It's not until I left, and how I left was, like, anybody on the OT knows the story as well. Basically, I had a pretty toxic relationship with an ex-girlfriend. And in one weekend on the Saturday, I'd split with her, kicked her out of my apartment, had the split, I was talking to Akash about it. And then the next morning, 9 a.m., Akash and I split. So it was this big, like, double whammy, one weekend, relationship split, business split, like, fuck me. And I literally got on my phone. This was like 9:30 in the morning that I split from Akash. I literally got on my phone, went on ba.com, picked the 10 p.m. flight to Dubai, which is funny enough now where I live, and just literally packed my bags, asked my dad to drop me at the airport later that evening, came over here just by myself, 4 or 5 nights. And that's when I come up with the idea of the business mentoring. But what led to it was that it was when I was looking back at everything that we'd done at RNT. And, Akash, if you talk to him, he'll probably have a different interpretation because there's 2 sides to every story. But when I look at it, I'm like, all of the successful things that worked were all my idea. The branding, the logo, the color scheme, the hybrid nutrition tracker, how we compensate the trainers, setting up the RNT Academy, all of these things genuinely were my idea. And, I don't really look into what Akash is doing now with it because I'm just one of these people, close a chapter, learn lessons like UP, it's just like learn loads of stuff there. At the end, the only thing I would say is I didn't feel very appreciated, shut the chapter on that, wish Nick the best with it. Same as RNT, shut the chapter, wish Akash well. But we've had, it's either 10 or 11 RNT trainers come through the OT in the last 9 months. And I've not solicited any of them, none of them. They've all come to me one by one, drop me a message, can I come through this? So from what I've heard is, I think, maybe I'm wrong because I haven't looked recently, but I believe RNT peaked and hit maybe like 11 or 12 coaches. I think he's now down to about 3 or 4. My point is that should be a big red flag. And what happened after I left, like, as far as I know, we had pretty happy coaches that loved, how they were being compensated, how they're being treated. If you look at the changes that he's now made, he's running the business into the ground. Like, there's clients that have jumped ship don't want to be coached by R&T coaches. I even had it when I started doing the OTE that I had some of my ex-online clients say to me, "Oh, do you mind if I go back to R&T? Because that's where you came from if you're not going to be coaching people anymore." I'm like, "Yeah, of course. Like, they're great trainers." And I had 3 of them in the space of 6 months message me going, "Can you recommend a trainer within your OT program? Because the service has been shocking." So my big point with this is that the whole time I was in business with Akash, I really thought that he was the business one. And I was almost like the grunt, I put in the work, but he's the thinker. And actually, on reflection, when I left it, I was like, holy fucking shit. All the good choices that grew up and put it on the map, I'm quite sure that came from the 6 inches within my ears. And most of the choices that have now, from what I've heard, have led to it, drop off the cliff a little bit, have been of his own volition. And if he's not at this point really like reflecting, how I would look at it is like Nathan and Kunal leaving R&T would be like Eddie leaving UP, right? Like you know that, through Nick's, flaws and through his ups and downs, his right-hand man is Eddie. If Eddie chose to just up and leave, I'm quite sure Nick would sit up and go, okay, you know what, maybe I've made a mistake here. For Akash to still be oblivious is just freaking nuts. Nathan and Kunal was the protege. Nathan was the right-hand man. Both of them to leave, not good.
And obviously you've seen with Nathan how far he's gone and what he's managed to achieve since, right?
Yeah, and now he's doing his own thing, and now he's building his business. He's doing really well financially. He's got a growing team, and now he's obviously part of the OT as well. We're about to launch the OT approved that he's going to head up. He obviously runs all the roundtables. Again, I just make it a really flexible, casual, working relationship where there doesn't need to be this big hierarchy and this ego driving it. It's just like, hey, one thing I always say, I teach it to the inner circle guys. If you ever hear me talking about like my team, you never hear me use the phrase, "Oh yeah, because so-and-so works for me." It's always so-and-so works with me. That's the difference, I think, with the Akash types.
Yeah. I think, from the experiences I've had with working, for people, you can tell the difference in good leaders and bad leaders by there's 2 kinds of people in my eyes that leave a business. You've got the people that would like someone like an R&T or let's say UP. You've got the people that will or don't want to do the business stuff. Like maybe Whiteton, they might become an Adam Hayley, but like at the time maybe don't want to. You just really want to be coaches. And then you got and those kind of people that if you start making them not feel appreciated, you start stamping them down, you start not allowing them to go to certain events and courses, post on social media. Like their hobby is training. You speak to trainers, it's you train, think about training, read about training, watch training, write about training. And if you can't do any of those things, like this podcast it's a 7 years in the making, and enough said about that. Those people are going to go, they would have never have left, and then now they're leaving. And then you've got the people that may have been like a you in a UP, or people that are like, yeah, there's a lifespan on because they're ambitious. But like, if you make those people, it's work with them. If you someone like Nick working with you, it's like his business, he now has to have his own creative license to run autonomy. He feels good about that. He's got this platform that's helping each other. He wants to post about the OTA on his stories. It's not an obligation. It's not, you need to please share this post, because you don't need to, because they're just so proud of it, because it's not taking over their life. It's a part of it.
Exactly. Like the pie is big enough for us all to have a slice. It's just casual. Like, I don't want to squash you from posting anything. I'm never going to force you to post anything. Here's this thing I'm building. I'd love it if you could help build it alongside me. Let's have some fun doing it. And if we can both get some wins along the way, then life's good. So, it's the case as well with, I suggested that, some of the coaches do some mentoring calls with Nathan on case studies and so on. And his first few inquire, and he comes straight to me. He's like, "Oh, how much should I charge for this? And, where do they pay?" I'm like, "How much do you feel it's worth?" He says a price. I'm like, "Okay, we'll go charge him that." "Yeah, but do you not want to cut? Do you not have to go through you?" I'm like, "Nope. Why do I want to take a cut of your money? Like, you're doing a great job on all the roundtables. You're helping the coaches. they get better results. So the client wins because, like, you know, our students win because they get better client results and therefore their business grows faster. I win because they're happy and then therefore they'll stay around longer because their business is growing faster. And then Nathan wins because he's taking all the cash and he doesn't feel like, you know, some monopoly thing and somebody's eating into his, you know, it's like we all win. So I just wish that, yeah, more businesses were slightly more like that and open-minded versus the whole squashing and extracting every single pound of flesh, like, you know.
Because those things get you know, seen. They get found out. And I think the lockdown, I don't know how it was necessarily in the UK, but certainly over here, the lockdown found out a lot of people. You know, like people were doing sessions like outside, doing a lot in sessions. They were speaking to other people in other gyms because they're all in the same parks and realizing, hold on, you're getting that, I'm getting that. And it's like, it just as soon as you realize, I can't remember, as a business coach, I heard this. It's like, there's one thing you don't fuck with, is people's pay.
Yep.
You can avoid that. If you can avoid messing with people's pay and paying people what they're worth, a lot of people will let a lot of other stuff go.
Exactly.
If you sort the other stuff too, then you're onto an absolute win.
Yep, it's true. Yep, people just, you know, they want to, if you got good coaches, they just want to be, you know, left to be able to double down on their passion. And then they just want to be compensated fairly for it. It's not that hard, is it?
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Pick themselves up, give them a platform, let them have their 5 minutes of fame that they want, give them that. It doesn't distract from you, and then pay them well. They'll be happy long-term.
I think not only does it not detract from you, it actually enhances you. Because now if you look at a business that sort of stops people doing it, because you don't want anyone to get too much notoriety because they may leave, they're probably not going to compete with the main business anyway. So it's not really much of a concern. But I remember when I first joined UP, like, non-slanderous, because this is just how it was. It was the Real Madrid of personal training. And like, it's like all these great people. And now I can imagine it with the OT, like if Nathan grows a following, if Sam grows a following, if Kevin grows a following, it's like all of a sudden, what's those guys have in common? Well, I might check out this Adam Hayley guy, because all of these guys seem to be putting on their stories about his webinars. Any coach that follows them and gets likes what they do, on the whole, is going to make you look better. Whereas if they all just went completely under the OT bracket, you might lose out on eyes.
Yep, true. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Just be a good human, really.
So going into like actually building the OT and building that up, like obviously you mentioned first one didn't have a name and like just getting started. What lessons have you learned from like building that from that platform to what it is now? Because originally it was a subscription like 8-week thing, and now it's this juggernaut of a year. Like how was that grown? What have you learned from that?
Where do I start with that? I think the first thing is, when I was building it, was leveraging others. So my thought process was that I'm small fry, a couple thousand followers. Nobody really knows Adam Hayley. As you say, I'd left previous business. But, I wasn't that well known. So my first few intakes were just people that are either, coaches I knew locally and stuff like that. So I knew I had to get outside of it. So first thing I did was I found trainers that had decent sized followings, but sucked at business. And I would mentor them for free. So there was one guy, for example, that had 126,000 followers, and a lot of them were PTs. Guy was in shape, shredded, sucked at business. It was like living paycheck to paycheck. So I offered to meet him for a coffee in Selfridges. I was in London, so we sat down, we had coffee together. I gave him, an hour and a half of my time. In return, I said to him, do you mind if we get a photo of the two of us at your laptop? And then, do you mind if I write a post and you post it? So he's like, yeah, sure. Like, give me an hour and a half of your time. So we did this. We got the waitress to take a photo of us. I wrote this post on his behalf, like ghost wrote it for him. He posted it, filled out my next intake overnight. Just from that many followers. So I just did that a few times, like helping certain people out, and was just like, hey, if this has been useful, can you just take a photo of the two of us on this call? Great coaching call with Adam Hayley 1, that sort of thing. That's really what started to get me some traction. The next thing is, I am borderline, I guess, work obsessed, which always helps. That the idea of anybody not getting a good service with the OTE is just like makes me feel sick. And I was like that as a coach with clients as well. So I think that's of course helped. And then it's really just focusing on like continually refining things. So, I've mentioned the last couple of weeks about putting this new content matrix sheet together and just waiting to get the PDF of it and so on. We don't need that. We've already got the 3+1 matrix. We've already run through the timeline thing. We don't need it. But it's me shutting myself in a room and going, right, again, what is the 1% issue at the moment? Okay, a few people are struggling with content production still, right? How can I dumb this thing down even more and make it bulletproof? It's just continually trying to break the OTE is what I do all the time. Sit down with Sandy and I'm like, right, let's brainstorm some ideas. Let's improve this. And she's like, well, what's broken? I'm like, nothing. That's not the point. We can still improve it. Like there's gonna be small little cracks. So it's on me to continually figure those out and tweak the onboarding process a little bit in the emails and revisit them every so often. And then re-go through some of our trainings and go, okay, like the retention webinar we did last week, the training we did last week. I'd already done one a year ago, but it was like, okay, I've learned a few new things myself. Let's level it up. The one-to-one calls, we were finding that as people were advancing through sort of calls 4 and 5, that sometimes, half the time they actually needed just to rinse and repeat. But that doesn't fire people up much. So then it's like, okay, I spent a couple of days putting together this OT roadmap, which gives the coaches now just a plug and play, prime, sell, scale, loads of different options and tactics and stuff like that. So I think it's just, to quote that Jeff Bezos thing, it's being customer obsessed. That and then trying to leverage others, and just that phrase I mentioned about 10, 15 minutes ago, which is do a good job, tell everyone about it. Any coach on here, like that should be the whole thing of this, just that one phrase, just do a good job, try and get your clients the best results possible. And then with the job that you do, tell everyone about it. So then stick it wherever socials, plaster it, get it out there. You do those two things, you can't really fail.
Yeah, I think do you reckon that's where a lot of your like inherent confidence has come from in terms of building the business? Is that because you're always looking to break it, you're always looking at pushing the next thing. It's like, even if I'm shit at something, I won't stay shit for long because I'm trying to find it out. Because I think it's similar for like for myself, that any confidence I have in any sort of endeavor I have comes from like, I never mind, like we talked about imposter syndrome earlier. I don't think it's a bad thing, because it's imposter syndrome that keeps me just that little bit unsatisfied to be like, right, I need to work out this. It will annoy me unless that thing is good. So I'm going to just keep going over it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's an area that even some people on the OT, if I'm honest, don't quite get. It's that when you're not that great at something, instead of bitching and moaning and giving up, I think this is probably a defining character trait. It's being able to go, what are they doing that I'm not? Where are they learning from? Who are they learning from? What can I do? So little things like, I remember a while back, I was getting told that my emails were going to the junk folder. I've got Paul that does all of my email automations and stuff. Could quite happily message him anytime. That's how we work. He's like on a retainer style relationship. So anytime, we just jump on calls and fix things. But I had this thing and it was like 5 o'clock in the evening, and I just Google, mail going to junk. And there's this website where you can test it and it comes back and gives you a score out of 10. Mine was at 4. Talking about DKIM records and DMARC and all this sort of stuff that I don't even understand, right? So what do? Rather than just go straight to Paul, I think, fuck it. I need to get my head around all this myself as well so that I can have more intelligent conversations. So I'm on YouTube until 2 o'clock in the morning, fixing it, having to play around. And I got my email score from, now I don't have to do this, but it was like, I wanted to take myself out of my comfort zone. So the reason I'm boring you with this is because then to contrast it, and apologies if the person is listening to this, but one of the OT students last week, what we have is when somebody books in a coaching call, 7 days after the call, they'll be sent a reminder email via Calendly going, hey, great to catch up with you last week on the call. Please make sure you've got your next one booked in. If you haven't already booked it in, here's the link below. So it's an auto email that goes out. So the way that I had written this autoresponder, I didn't put the HTTPS // I just wrote calendly.com / whatever. So I get a reply to this email from the client going, the OT student, hi Adam, trying to use the link below, but it's not working. Can you please send me the fresh link? I had to write back going, have you tried just copying it into your browser and hitting enter? Like, that is the difference, right? Of some people just need it like fucking spoon-fed. Like, the URL is there. It just doesn't have the blue line under it so you can click it. All you got to do is hold it, copy, put it in your browser, paste, done. It's taken you longer to hit reply and ask me that and for me to reply to you than. So I think this is, an element of it sometimes is when you are new to something, if you've got the right mindset, you've got that element of imposter syndrome, you want to level up, it's being resourceful and putting in the hours of the reading and the learning from people and jumping on calls and paying for people's time versus just, expecting a URL to be spoon-fed to you.
Yeah. I think this interesting thing about that, we're going through that, and things that were just pop up in my head as you're saying it. Like, where we talked about earlier on about being in that dungeon and the things you learn from that dungeon, and we focus on the not being appreciated stuff, and but do you think like a lot of these same issues probably came up from when you were coaching clients on the gym floor? Like when you were talking about that with the URL, it's a similar thing when I send out like a meal plan to a client, and the first thing you do is go, "You got any recipes?" And I hate it. It's not that I hate recipes. Like, I'm all for, if someone comes to me and goes, "Oh, I've tried these 7 recipes. I've got loads of time at the moment. Can I cook some more?" Like, here's 3 more. But like, I'm not a chef. Believe me, you don't want my recipes. It's bland chicken with Frank's hot sauce on. You really just don't want that. And like the fact that someone couldn't Google and find out the recipes, or go and read ask you a question that's in the welcome document. And I'm like, I'm assuming you probably get a lot of the same. The same things that make a body transformation successful. It's the same thing that makes a business.
It's just the age that we're in, aren't we? Like, everybody just expects everything. I mean, take for example, obviously you heard the doorbell go a minute ago. Obviously, I split Sandy's eye open a couple of days ago. Accidentally, may I add, for anybody that's not aware, tried flipping my phone and catching it, and Sandy's face caught it instead of my hand. Anyway, my point, let's digress from that, is I've ordered her some scar cream from Amazon, right? Ordered it this morning. It's already at the door within like 3 hours. So this is what we're used to now, where it's like you can quite happily just pay to play and you just get stuff like it's instant, and clients expect this. Loads of coaches join the OT. It's the same thing. It's like, I've signed up, therefore, are you going to create my post for me? Are you going to give me clients? It's like, no, there's an element of graft that goes into this, and it's on you to be resourceful and look into it. We've had people that have signed up and then gone, I don't have an hour and a half to 2 hours to watch these webinars. I don't know how anybody has the time to do that. I'm like, well, when I'm teaching you the same trainings that took my online coaching business to do 40 grand a month, how you can not have the time to sit through an hour and a half webinar and take a gem or two is beyond me. It's just that same mindset. Yeah.
I would love to meet those people, because the time difference has been my biggest. It's not frustration with the OT. It's nothing on your part, but it's just like I'd say I'll do 1 a quarter while I stay up live, and like the last one, it took me out of commission for like 2 days. So I'm up to like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And your webinars, like the Wednesday ones, are so good that I don't get to sleep after I finish at 3 a.m.
Because your mind's
I'm wired, and like the thought of someone not being able to go, "Oh, man, it's too long to be able to watch." Like, I want to watch more of them.
I don't get it. It's recorded. It's information that's so applicable. And, my big thing whenever I'm writing a webinar is, there are lots of mentorships and courses that I've been on where the person teaching it wants to come across as a genius. So they'll overcomplicate, they use big words. That's not my goal. Every time I do a webinar, I think, is there at least one golden nugget in here that every single person on this call tomorrow can go and do something? So I don't get it when these people say it, Even one of the guys on the Recalibrate call yesterday, he'd sent us an email probably about 10 days ago saying, struggling, the usual stuff, not landing clients quickly enough. We look and we're like, well, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, you haven't done this. Anyway, he's on the Recalibrate yesterday. He's one of the people that, and bearing in mind, I'd said, block out at least 2 hours for this thing. I'd said it multiple times. He gets in like 50 minutes in, an hour in, he's like, this has been great so far. Got to go, need to go and record content. I'm thinking, I would get it if it's a sales call. but you can record content in another hour from now. You've been told it's 2 hours. So it's this mentality that those of you, like if you look at the call, started at 180 people, kudos to the 180 that turn up, finished at 130 odd, over 2 hours later. It's those that, manage to, when they hear that this event is coming up, they hear it's going to be 2 hours. It's those that go and allocate 2-3 hours to it and go, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to see this thing through. I'm going to put my phone down. They're the ones that get the results. The ones that go, oh yeah, there's this cool event that's going on Friday. I'll turn up for a bit. I'll sit with my camera off and I'll sit on my phone, or I'll do 50 minutes of it and then go and record content that I could quite easily record 2 hours from now. It's, big mindset thing. And these are the things that I still continually try and assess and think, what could we do differently? Can we improve on it? But eventually there comes a point where you're like, okay, just 80-20 rule. You're always going to have the 20% that they're not going to put the work in.
So, it's an interesting thing I wanted to cover there. We talked about the amount of mentors you've been on, people are trying to sound smart. And I think this is the reason why I felt like I've always gone with you and resonated with the stuff that I've done, because, you've obviously built a business that's educating trainers now more in the business side of things. Like the majority of my career now has probably been educating trainers in terms of the gym floor side of things. And I learned that very quickly in terms of, I had courses where you have 7 or 8 weeks or lectures or hours of science-based stuff that when you got to the practical stuff, you've forgotten what all the stuff you'd learned in week 1. And I learned very quickly, it's learn a system, just do the system, and then double back and layer on why that system works. Hey, you landed 4 clients, or, oh, you lost you added 5 kilos to your bench press. Okay, do you want to know why that worked now? Yeah, because now they're excited. Well, and obviously there's a little bit of that with the OT, but what have you learned from doing so much teaching over the last few years that you feel that's helped you become a good teacher, live or remotely or whatever else?
Yeah, I think first thing is removing the ego, right? When you first start teaching, whether it's doing a live seminar, whether it's doing a webinar, often you would have probably been part of other people's mentorships and stuff yourself. And you're used to seeing these other people getting tags on Instagram stories, fucking mind blown and all these emojis and so on. And for me, it was removing the ego, not wanting that. It was I would rather not have people go on Instagram stories and go, oh my God, Adam's a genius teaching this really overcomplicated thing. I would rather the private message under the radar that goes, holy fuck, I was really struggling financially. And since applying XYZ that you made so easy to implement, I'm now at 10 clients. I've just hit my first $2,000 or whatever. So I think that was the first thing, is removing the ego, understanding that the webinars are not there to benefit me. They're not there to stroke my ego. So the easier that I can make it, the more bite-sized I can make it, the more done for you I can make it, the better results the students get. And then in the long run, I get the win, because then the OT becomes the go-to place. So in the short term, there'll be some other mentors or stuff that try and teach all these overcomplicated, funnels and split testing and blah, 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 blah. But we have the people go from them to us because they didn't get a result there. And then they come to us and they actually get a result because we just make it real simple to implement. So I think that's the first thing. Second thing is understanding that obviously people learn in different ways. Some people, like to listen. Some people like to see it visually. I'm more of a visual person. That's why I do my horrendous drawings and stuff like that. So it's trying to cater for that not only, of course, can people listen to the webinars and download the audio, but they've got the visual element, they've got the slides, they've got me scribbling them down on an iPad. And then the next step is when our new membership site is built out, we'll have the downloadable PDFs that will have key takeaways as well. So yeah, I'm trying to think what else from a teaching perspective. And then I think it's there's this balance that you get when you're trying to scale a business, right? On the one hand, one-to-one, bespoke, people perceive it to be that that's where you get the best results from. Problem is that it's really tough to scale. Therefore, the group coaching comes in. A lot of other mentorships are either you pay really, really high fees to be able to work with the person purely one-on-one. But if you've got a really good business coach that's doing, multiple 6-7 figures or whatever, you're going to have to be paying hundreds and hundreds per hour. Or they go down the route where it's just the group calls. And then sometimes you can feel a little bit lost and, you have the odd problem. You can't really go to anybody for it. So what we've tried getting on the OT is that blend where it's like the price point that I think we're at is really, it's not cheap, but I think it's really competitive for what you get, considering you get 3 group coaching calls that allow us to scale. Then you also get the benefit of the one-to-one calls throughout the year that allow you to problem shoot in a private setting. Then you have the accountability coach that checks in with you just as you're losing motivation. And then also you have all the done for you documents that just take the thinking and the overwhelm and the procrastination out of it. So that my goal is that most OT students, as they really get to the thick of it, should be creating content, closing clients, getting their current clients, amazing results. Those are the 3 things I want them focusing on. And I think it's through just continually reassessing all of those little points that I think the system that we've got is pretty fucking good.
I think a couple of good takeaways from the things you said there, like for all the people doing ads and like just pushing people into these sort of like quick win, quick reward, but you only be able to sell shit once. And like the fact that I think sets the OT apart is that, you know, like I've been in the industry a decade. I've trained trainers for a decade. I'm not arrogant enough to not think there's anything more I can learn about actually getting client results. And like the fact that I can now have that resource of going and listening to the roundtables. I can go and learn more about business stuff. I can have a Q&A on the Monday. I can have the individual calls. It sets it apart. And then the other thing I was thinking, like, is the price point is, yeah, you're not cheap, but it's manageable, which I often think, especially with personal training mentorships, you see it a lot when you get reached out to people. I had this for years where it's like, oh, you struggle to make money? Oh, cool. Pay me 10 grand. Like, if I had 10 grand, I might not be needing to pay this. So it's like, it's that manageableness to kind of make that first step. And if you go to your level and want a mastermind or you're in a circle, that's a different story. But like, you need that stepping stone.
Yeah. It's been an argument that I've had with my own mentors for ages where they're like, oh, you can't do it at this price. All of them. When I tell them the price, when I tell them what the students get and I tell them the price, every mentor I've worked with, every single one of them has gone, you need to charge more for it. You've got a mindset issue. And I'm like, nope, it's not a mindset issue. It's that when we qualify people coming into the OT, we've realized that the average trainer tends to come to us earning between £1,700 and about £2,200 per month. So when you think about it, the OT is a quarter of their income. So there are other mentorships in the UK, for example, that are about just over double the price of us. In their ones, you only get one call. You don't get an accountability coach. There's none of the roundtable stuff. You don't get any of this. You're paying twice the amount. So in our one, to the price point that we've got, I think is like, I'm happy with it. Could I charge more for it? Probably. But it's like living a very nice lifestyle. Business is growing month to month. We're up in revenue. But it is also affordable for that trainer that knows that they really want to build this thing. It's not cheap, but it is like, okay, we get you 3 clients. It's covered.
I sometimes think as well, like a slightly lower price point sometimes works in your favor because it shows you the character of the person behind that. It's the fact that you've looked at that, you've looked at those things. You know, I'm very aware of business coaches in the UK, and you probably know who this is, or I'm not necessarily going to call them out, who tells people to dramatically increase their prices whilst considerably dropping value. And I would be very, very certain to say that if you ever increase your prices, you would increase value to justify the price increase, not do both. No.
It's like, yeah, if I do it, it's to increase value as well. It's that we'd want to be paying for something else ourselves for you guys. But yeah, I mean, I'm part of, a couple of masterminds. I mean, I'm part of one that cost me 50 grand a year, dollars. So about 35 grand. Another one that's another like 30 grand a year. One of them, you get one call when you start it. There's no accountability coach. There's only one group call a week. One call when you start it. That's it. 30 grand, 35 grand. And then the other one, you get one call every quarter. So when you think that the OT is like 10% of that price, and then you get calls throughout the year, plus the 3 group coaching calls, plus the done for you resources, plus the accountability stuff. That's why if we ever get on calls with people joining it and they say like, it's not for me, or I don't even try forcing them, because I'm just like, the value exchange here, I'm quietly confident that it's in your favor, not mine.
So like just to sort of like get a few closing questions. I know I don't want to, you're very busy and you've got a number of calls today. Like, You obviously, I'm going to touch on briefly, this is a very small question, but obviously you moved your business away from the UK into Dubai, into this ridiculous view, which I can sort of see on the left-hand side, but I see it every week on the calls. What made that move? Why Dubai, other than amazing content production with that view?
So I first came to Dubai when I was 12. It was completely different, as you can imagine. It was like 2002. Loved it even back then. I then came back when I was 19. Loved it. And then basically, as soon as I became an online coach, I ended up coming out here 3 to 4 times every year. Pretty much every quarter, I would come out here for like 3 to 5 nights. Just loved it. I nearly moved out here, if you remember, for UP, because I was going to come out here and open UP Dubai. But it wasn't the right time for me. So I'd always had this place kind of in mind. Sandy and I started seeing each other. She came out here twice for me. She loved it. And then we moved here within 2 weeks. Most people don't know this. So we're in lockdown. Sandy had moved in with me at the beginning of lockdown. If everybody remembers, it was just going to be 3 weeks. And of course it, went on and on, and we didn't want to kill each other. I didn't launch off the balcony. So we were like, right, we should probably look into getting a bigger place. We went around, looked at a few places, didn't really like anywhere. And I remember one day we had seen somewhere, still didn't get a great gut feeling. Got back to my apartment back in the UK, sat on the sofa to do some work. She lifted up her laptop lid, and it was the Dubai skyline as her desktop background. And I just said to her, why don't we move to Dubai? She's like, what? And I was like, well, world's going to shit over here. Like, the UK is not going to get any better. We've got an online business. We both love it. Why don't we move to Dubai? She's like, you serious? Fuck yeah, I am. So that night, I'm such an impulsive person. That night I start inquiring. I get put in contact with somebody that can sort out the visa and the business registration. 2.5 weeks later, I think we'd first come up with the idea mid-July, and we landed here August the 1st. So it was fast.
And if there's a better advert, I'll go on to closing questions now, because if there's a better advert for any coach that wants to wondering about going online, it's that. Being able to, in a lockdown, just change your whole life around.
In a lockdown, things won't get any better. First it was a novelty of the two of us, building a business from this little thing, and everybody being locked down. And then, it was just like, right, it's not getting any better here. We can either do what everybody else in the UK is doing, which is moan about Boris's decisions, or it's like, we like the way that Dubai are running it, jump on a one-way flight, away we go. And we just did it with the mindset of, hey, if we hate it, we can just come back,
Yeah. So a couple of closing questions here. I have a couple are industry focused, and I'll just finish off with a couple of silly ones. So what is if you had one bit of advice for a trainer that is feeling trapped on the gym floor, that isn't just join the OT, because that's a cop out, because yes, we know they should. What would it be?
It would be to just start making the move online. And it's not use the OT. It's just go follow myself, go find my competitors and follow them, and just pick up all the free shit. So for example, if you do find me on Instagram at Adam Hayley 1, and then you just go to my bio link, you'll get my sales script that's totally free. And then follow my content, and that will start getting you things to do online. And even if you don't want to go completely online, the reason I think you should look into it is, one, it's just to diversify you. If the last year has taught you anything with COVID, it's to show that the one-to-one model is fragile. So even if you have no intentions on leaving the gym floor, probably just going to secure yourself financially if you can land 5, 10, 15 clients. Second thing is, if you're feeling how Simon had mentioned in terms of sort of the trapped feeling and so on, initially it may just be that you just want to almost buy back some of your time. So by that, I mean, if you can work out, okay, I'm doing 30 hours on the gym floor as PT, which really is 40 hours, as a work week. I'm out of the house morning, noon, and night. I'm just going to pick 2 days of the week where I'm going to now replace that with online income. So you would work out how much is it going to cost for you to buy back 2 of your days. Suddenly you're only PTing 3 days a week, 2 days dedicated to online. You just have that balance. So that would be what I would recommend. It would be genuinely, even if you don't see yourself being a full-time laptop wanker, it would be follow my Instagram content, other trainers' Instagram content, try and land your first 5 to 10 clients, charge 125 a month, 150 a month, something like that. So cushy little couple grand a month that you have coming in. And that will probably ease the feeling and the having to do crazy hours on the gym floor.
So you often keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the fitness industry. Within the next, obviously, we've seen a massive change this year with how the industry works. What do you think is the next thing that will break through in the industry? Where do you see it in like 5-10 years?
AI.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
When you think of it, even like Gatorade and stuff like that, we're investing into it. You know, it's only a matter of time. It's getting better. I was watching a documentary the other day. A company in Singapore is developing it where you can scan your phone camera over food, and they're working on it, they're working on the accuracy of breaking down, the nutrition profile of food. You can have more, I think Aura Ring, I think you're wearing one right now, Whoop bands. They're just going to keep improving, aren't they? So eventually, how good can they get? Can they really start doing the job of telling somebody what they need? So I do see it starting to venture down the route of AI. I think that's a bad thing for trainers that are part of other mentorships that are teaching so for example, there's a competitor of mine who, I'm not going to name the type of checking because it will narrow it down straight away to who it is. But basically the long and the short of what he's suggesting is that you have your clients self-choose whether they check in or not. So there's been trainers in his group that are celebrating going, oh my God, I have 45 clients in my business, but only 6 of them have checked in this week. Never had this freedom before. And I'm just thinking, you fucking morons. If you've got somebody paying you a premium for this service, and then out of, say, a 12-week package, they've only checked in with you 4 times, any smart human being is going to get to the end of it and go, oh, actually, I keep ticking this box saying that I'm good to go for the next week. Maybe I don't need this trainer anymore. So I think with the move over to AI, trainers that are, really just trying to take their foot off the gas and not deliver that accountability and customer experience, I think will struggle. I think the trainers that are smart with how to leverage automations and systems, but still have that one-to-one element will crush it, because there'll always be a need for that, right?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think the AI will change that anyway. I think the people are already doing that. It won't last long. It might be a quick buck, but the results will dry up. Again, you can only sell shit once. That person that feels like, oh, I haven't checked in enough, probably isn't going to refer their friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
So last very, very quick question then to let you get on your way. As I'm heading out there in a couple of weeks, best restaurant in Dubai?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think a really good one is Salt Bay Burger.
I want to do that.
So yes, you've got obviously you got Nusret, which is the official restaurant, but it is really, really expensive. You're looking at easy £100 a steak. So if you want to dress up and treat yourself for a night, nice. But Salt Bay Burger are the best burgers that I've had. Expensive for a burger, but it's reasonable for a meal out. So I think Salt Bay Burger is great. You got these little black latex gloves that look really cool. The burger bun is injected with it's dyed with squid ink, so it's black. Don't worry, it doesn't taste like fish. But it's black. It just looks super cool. So I think that's really cool. Where else? Nusret, if you are pushing the boat out. There's STK down on the marina if you do like a good steak. And then food-wise, Cheesecake Factory, of course, you've got to check out in Dubai Mall because it's right opposite one of the largest indoor aquariums as well. So worth checking that out. And then if you like sushi, then my 2 favorite places is either Netsu in the Mandarin Oriental Hotel and also Nobu, which is in the Atlantis. You can't go wrong with any of those.
Well, I did say if you don't cross paths, depending on where your travel lies, I owe you a Cheesecake Factory because I did promise you that.
I'm down with that.
Last thing is best experience you've had personally since moving online.
I mean, moving here is one of them. I'd say my best experience, I'm going to class it as best and fun at the same time. Going to the US, obviously, so I traveled my first year of online coaching. I traveled 9 times, which I hadn't been able to do as a PT. Pardon me. One of the trips that we did was we did a road trip. We started in San Diego. We did a business mastermind in San Diego. We hired a Ford Mustang, drove up the PCH, did a few nights in LA, and then drove across from LA to Vegas. That whole trip, being able to do that, while building our business, our clients still getting results, was just one of the best feelings in the world. And it was all topped off when we actually made a sale and signed somebody up within the pool party at Wet Republic in Vegas.
Oh, that's amazing.
Walking past somebody, I definitely do not look like this now. This was back when I, was still in reasonable shape. And I walked past and this guy just, he was obviously drunk. He just tapped me and he's just like, oh, how do I get arms like this? So I get talking to him and eventually I tell him I've got this online coaching thing. And he's like, online? I'm like, yeah. He goes, so even when you're back in the UK, you can still coach me? I'm like, yeah. He pulled out his bank card. I pulled out my phone, logged on to R&T's website and literally signed him up, like 6 vodkas deep, both of us. It wasn't me taking advantage. And signed up and he worked with us for like 6 months. So that was pretty fucking cool, to be at a pool party in Vegas, half cut and make a sale. So that just doesn't happen as a PT.
That's now I've embarked on a coach myself and I'm getting myself back in shape this year. One of my goals is to try and do that. I need to.
It was a pretty cool feeling. Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know where to find you, where do you find it about you, about the OT and everything else?
Yeah. So easiest one will just be Instagram. So just at Adam Hayley 1. So just my full name and then the number 1. I got a few videos on YouTube as well. So if you are a trainer that is venturing online and you're unsure on how to close and stuff like that, got a few quick trainings on there. If you're struggling with content, as a bit of a thank you, if you've made it this far in the podcast, just in Simon's podcast, drop me a direct message just saying Simon's podcast, and I'll send you out a couple of our resources that we've got typically for OT members. So a couple of like content guides and stuff like that. Just mention the podcast to me and as a bit of a thanks for listening to me waffle. I'll hook you up with that.
You're going for this top spot now on the podcast, aren't you? This is how you do it.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. Yeah, whatever they're offering, I'll double it.
But I'm going to keep in the loop now with like daily updates of how close you're getting.
Exactly. Send me over the thumbnails and stuff, and I'll get this out there.
Awesome, man. Right, I'll thank you very much. This has been really, really good fun. Thank you for being part of it.
No worries, dude. Have a great day. I'll speak to you soon.